Paris, 1925. The war to end all wars has been over for 7 years, but the scar tissue on the face of Europe is still pink and tender. The City of Lights is not the romantic dreamscape found in postcards or American movies. It is a city of nervous energy, of jazz that screams rather than sings, of inflation that eats the savings of the middle class like moths in a winter coat. And in the center of this bruised metropolis stands a skeleton of iron, the Eiffel Tower. To us, it is a symbol of romance. To the Parisians of 1925, it was a rusting, hulking mistake, a relic of a World's Fair that had ended decades ago. The paint was peeling in long, leprous strips. The elevators groaned under the weight of neglect. It was a monolith of expense in a city that could barely afford to sweep its streets. And staring at this decaying giant from the window of a luxury suite was a man who understood the specific algebra of decay. His name was Victor Lustig, or at least that was the name on the passport in his breast pocket. He had others, dozens of others. He was a man of indeterminate origin, a ghost with a manicure. He sat in a hubbaked chair, reading the newspaper, a cigarette burning slowly in a crystal ashtray. The smoke curled upward, blue and lazy, framing a face that was handsome but oddly unmemorable. It was a face designed to be trusted and then forgotten. Lustig was reading a small, buried article in the newspaper. A complaint from a city official about the cost of maintaining the tower, the article suggested, in a tone of weary pragmatism, that it might be cheaper to tear the whole thing down than to paint it again. Most people would read that and turn the page. Lustig read it and saw a door opening into a cathedral of impossible wealth. He didn't see the tower as iron. He saw it as psychology. He understood that the bigger the lie, the more the human brain struggles to reject it. If you steal a wallet, you are a thief. If you steal a national monument, you are a force of nature. He began to build the stage. This is the first rule of the confidence game. Reality is malleable. If you control the setting, you control the actor. Lustig hired a forger, not a street corner artist, but a master who could replicate the heavy, cream-colored stationery of the French Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He created credentials that bore the weight of the state, official seals, signatures that looked like they had been carved in stone. He then sent letters to 5 of the largest scrap metal dealers in Paris. These were men of iron and grease. Men who had made fortunes dismantling the wreckage of the Great War. They dealt in shell casings, tank treads, and barbed wire. They were rich, but they were not elite. And that is a crucial distinction. They had money, but they did not have status. They were hungry for acceptance. Lustig invited them to a secret meeting at the Hotel de Crillon. The Crillon is important. It is not just a hotel. It is a palace of marble and gold leaf. It smells of old money and beeswax. By hosting the meeting here, Lustig was borrowing the authority of the architecture. When the 5 dealers arrived, they were already intimidated. They were men used to shouting over the noise of grinders and crushers. Here, their footsteps were swallowed by thick Persian carpets. They spoke in hushed tones. Lustig met them in a private suite. He played the role perfectly. He was not the eager salesman. He was the exhausted bureaucrat. He wore a suit that was expensive but conservative. He carried a leather briefcase that looked like it contained the secrets of the Republic. He poured them drinks, not with the flourish of a host, but with the weary camaraderie of a man who has a difficult job to do. He spoke softly. This forced them to lean in. This forced them to enter his physical space. crossing the threshold of intimacy. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice grave, "the government is broke." It was a truth they all knew. France was bleeding money. "The Eiffel Tower," he continued, gesturing vaguely toward the window where the iron spire pierced the grey sky, "is falling apart. It was never meant to be permanent. It was built for the exhibition. Now it is a safety hazard. The maintenance costs are bankrupting the department." He let the silence hang there. He let them fill the void with their own knowledge of the city's decay. "The decision has been made," Lustig said, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "We are going to scrap it." He saw the shock in their eyes, but he also saw the greed. 7,000 tons of iron. It was a mountain of metal. The contract to dismantle the Eiffel Tower would make any one of them the king of Paris. But Lustig warned them this was a state secret. If the public found out, there would be riots. The deal had to be done quietly. It had to be done now. He watched their faces. He was a hunter looking for the limping gazelle, and he found him André Poisson. Poisson was the perfect mark. He was insecure. He was a man who felt looked down upon by the Parisian aristocracy. He wanted to be a player. He wanted to be the man who saved the government. He wanted the prestige that came with the most famous demolition job in history. Lustig saw the hunger in Poisson's eyes. It was a desperate, wet heat. The meeting ended. Lustig told them to submit their bids, but he already knew who would win. A few days later, Lustig arranged a private meeting with Poisson. But there was a problem. Poisson was nervous. His wife, a woman of sharp instincts and suspicion, had planted a seed of doubt. Why was everything so secretive? Why was a government official meeting in a hotel room and not at the ministry? The logic of the real world was trying to intrude on the dream Lustig had woven. This is the moment where an Amistad panics. An Amistad would try to produce more documents, more proof. But Lustig was a master. He understood that when a mark suspects a lie, you don't defend the lie. You create a new, smaller truth that confirms their bias. Lustig sat Poisson down. He sighed. He looked at his hands, acting embarrassed. He dropped the mask of the perfect bureaucrat and put on the mask of the corrupt human. "Monsieur Poisson," Lustig said, his voice trembling slightly, "you must understand. A government salary, ... It is very small. The inflation, ... The cost of living in Paris, ... He let the sentence trail off. He looked up at Poisson with the eyes of a man asking for mercy. Poisson smiled. The tension left his shoulders. The suspicion evaporated instantly. "Ah," Poisson thought, "he is not a fake. He is just corrupt." This made sense to Poisson. A perfect, honest official selling the Eiffel Tower in secret was suspicious. But a greedy, underpaid bureaucrat looking for a bribe, that was the Paris he knew. That was reality. The authority bias shifted. Poisson no longer viewed Lustig as a superior moral force. He viewed him as a partner in crime. The psychological barrier collapsed. Poisson didn't just write a check for the scrap metal. He wrote a second check, a massive bribe to secure the contract. He handed over a fortune in francs, his hands shaking not with fear, but with the adrenaline of the deal. He thought he was buying iron. He was buying air. Lustig took the money. He shook Poyais' hand with the firm, dry grip of a man who has just concluded a boring Tuesday at the office. He walked out of the Hotel de Crillon, hailed a taxi, and went straight to the bank. An hour later, Victor Lustig was on a train bound for Vienna. He sat in a first-class compartment, watching the French countryside blur into a smear of green and brown. He had a suitcase full of cash next to him. He lit a cigarette. He didn't laugh. He didn't celebrate. He just watched the smoke rise. Back in Paris, André Poisson waited. He waited for the official documents. He waited for the demolition crews. He waited for the announcement. And as the days turned into weeks, the silence of the ministry began to scream in his ears. He went to the government offices. He asked for the Deputy Director General. The clerk looked at him with blank confusion. No such person existed. He showed them the stationery. They told him it was a forgery. The realization hit Poisson like a physical blow. It wasn't just the loss of money, it was the humiliation. He had bought the Eiffel Tower. He, a scrap dealer, had believed he could own the skyline of Paris. And here is the final, brilliant twist of Lustig's knife. Poisson never went to the police. He never reported the crime. The shame was too absolute. To admit that he had been swindled was to admit that he was a fool of monumental proportions. He swallowed the loss. He buried the secret deep inside his chest, where it rotted like gangrene. Lustig, sitting in a coffee house in Vienna, read the French papers every day. He waited for the headline, "Madman sells Eiffel Tower," but the headline never came. The silence stretched on, and in that silence, Lustig realized something profound about the human ego. If you hurt a man's wallet, he will scream. If you destroy his pride, he will stay silent forever. Victor Lustig had sold 70,000 tons of iron that didn't belong to him. But he hadn't really sold the tower. He had sold André Poisson a mirror that reflected Poisson's own greed, his own insecurity, and his own desperate need to be someone who mattered. And when the mirror shattered, Poisson was the one who swept up the glass, terrified that anyone would see the cuts on his hands. Lustig sold a landmark made of iron. But our next subject proved that you don't need heavy metal to fool the world. Sometimes all you need is the right suit. The year is 1964. The world is changing, vibrating with the electric hum of the Beatles and the Cold War. But in the terminals of JFK, LaGuardia, and Heathrow, time stands still. In this era, the airport is not a bus station with wings. It is a cathedral. The ceilings are high and white, echoing with the soft, chime-like announcements of distant destinations. The air smells of expensive tobacco, Chanel No. 5, and the faint, sweet chemical scent of jet fuel. And walking through the center of this cathedral, parting the sea of grey flannel suits and screaming children, is the high priest. He is tall. He is 6 feet of American confidence. He wears a navy blue uniform that is pressed so sharp the creases could cut skin. On his head sits a cap with a white crown, adorned with the gold wings of Pan American World Airways. He walks with a rhythm that suggests he owns the floor he steps on. When he passes, men straighten their ties. Women stop talking mid-sentence to watch him glide by. He carries a leather flight bag that suggests a life of exotic layovers in Rome, Paris, and Tokyo. He is a pilot. He is the pinnacle of the mid-century male hierarchy. He is a man entrusted with a metal bird worth millions of dollars and the lives of 200 souls. He is competence personified. But if you were to peel back that navy blue blazer, if you were to strip away the gold buttons and the starch, you would find a terrifying truth. He is not a pilot. He is not a man. He is a 16-year-old boy named Frank Abagnale from New Rochelle, New York. And he doesn't know how to fly a kite, let alone a Boeing 77. Victor Lustig sold the Eiffel Tower by exploiting the secret greed of a scrap dealer. But Frank Abagnale exploited something far more fundamental, something hardwired into the lizard brain of every human being on Earth. He exploited the halo effect. The halo effect is a cognitive glitch. It is the brain's desire to take a shortcut. When we see a powerful visual cue like a uniform, a badge, or a clerical collar, our brain stops processing the individual. We stop looking at the face. We stop analyzing the behavior. We simply see the symbol. We say, that is a pilot. And we instantly attach every attribute of a pilot to that person. We assume they are intelligent, brave, skilled, honest, and safe. We do not verify. We trust the packaging. Abagnale discovered this power by accident, but he wielded it like a master swordsman. He realized that the uniform was a cloak of invisibility. It blinded people to his youth. It blinded them to his nervousness. It blinded them to the fact that he was a runaway teenager surviving on check fraud and adrenaline. His transformation began not in a flight school, but in a uniform supply shop in Manhattan. He walked in and told a lie so simple it was brilliant. He said he was a real pilot who had lost his uniform while getting it cleaned. He gave a fake employee number. The tailor didn't call Pan Am Security. The tailor didn't ask for a license. The tailor just measured his inseam. Because who would lie about being a pilot? The lie was too big to be questioned. Once he had the skin, the wolf could enter the fold. Abagnale's greatest trick was not flying the planes. He was smart enough to never touch the controls. His trick was deadheading is the practice where an off-duty pilot hitches a ride on a commercial flight to get to their next assignment. They don't pay for a ticket. They sit in the spare seat. Sometimes in first class, sipping champagne. Sometimes in the cockpit, right behind the captain. Imagine the psychological pressure of that moment. Picture Abagnale, a boy whose voice has barely dropped, walking up to the gate at Miami International. He hands over a fake ID card he made with a model aeroplane decal. He smiles at the gate agent. Pan Am deadheading to Los Angeles, he says. The agent looks at the uniform. She sees the gold wings. Her brain releases the chemicals of trust. She doesn't see a sweating teenager. She sees authority. Right this way, Captain. He walks down the jet bridge. The air gets colder. He steps onto the plane. The flight attendants beam at him. Can I get you some coffee, Captain? A magazine? They treat him better than the paying customers. He takes the jump seat in the cockpit. This is the jump seat paradox. He is now sitting 3 feet away from the 2 men who can expose him in a heartbeat, the captain and the first officer. These are men who have flown thousands of hours. They speak a language of acronyms, vectors, and hydraulics. Abagnale is sitting in the dark with them, the instrument panel glowing like a Christmas tree of complex data he cannot read. The silence in the cockpit is deafening. The engines roar outside, but inside, it is just the hum of the radio and the breathing of the men. Abagnale knows that one question, one specific, technical question about the flap settings or the fuel mixture will end him. He will be arrested when they land. He will go to prison. So what does he do? He uses the halo effect against the experts. He stays quiet. He projects calm. He knows that pilots are a brotherhood. They don't quiz each other. To quiz a fellow pilot would be an insult. It would imply you don't trust the uniform. So the real pilots assume he knows what they know. They chat about the union. They complain about the food. They talk about their wives. They never ask him to fly the plane. In one terrifying instance, the captain turned to him mid-flight. The plane was cruising at 30,000 feet. The captain wanted a break. "Hey, Frank," the captain said, unbuckling his belt. "Take the stick for a minute." Time stopped. The air in the cockpit seemed to freeze. Abagnale looked at the yoke. It was a piece of machinery that controlled the fate of everyone on board. If he touched it, the plane would dip. The illusion would shatter. He looked at the captain and engaged the ultimate defense mechanism. He laughed. He leaned back, casual, relaxed, the picture of a man on vacation. "I'm strictly off the clock, Cap," he said. "I'm not touching a thing." "You guys are doing a great job," the captain laughed. "All right, suit yourself." He put the plane on autopilot instead. Abagnale survived because he understood that confidence is more convincing than competence. If you act like you belong, the world will rearrange itself to accommodate you. He flew over 250 flights. He visited 26 countries. He stayed in the finest hotels in Paris, dining on escargot and vintage wine, charging it all to the airline that didn't know he existed. But the life of the imposter is a lonely one. It is a life of constant, grinding paranoia. Every time a phone rang in his hotel room, his heart hammered against his ribs. Was it the front desk, or was it the FBI? Every time a police car drove past him on the street, he had to force his legs to keep walking at a normal pace. The uniform was armor, but inside the armor, he was shivering. He couldn't have friends. Friends ask questions. Friends want to know where you went to school, who your parents are. He couldn't have a real lover. How could he explain why he never actually flew a plane? He was a ghost, floating through the high-altitude jet stream of the 1960s. He was everywhere and nowhere. The check fraud that funded this lifestyle was industrial in scale. He wasn't just printing money, he was printing trust. He printed payroll checks that looked more real than the real ones. He learned that a bank teller is just like the gate agent. She sees the pilot's uniform, she sees the confident smile, and she doesn't check the signature. She counts out the cash because she wants the approval of the man in the gold wings. He stole millions. But what he really stole was the peace of mind of the system. Eventually, the net began to close. The FBI, led by agents who were tired of chasing a phantom, began to map his movements. They realized they weren't chasing a syndicate. They were chasing a kid. The chase became a game of inches. Abagnale would slip out the back door of a hotel in New Orleans just as the agents kicked in the front door. He would jump from a second-story landing in Montreal. He was running on pure adrenaline, fueled by the terrifying knowledge that when the uniform came off, he would be nothing. When they finally caught him in France, he wasn't flying. He was on the ground. The magic of the sky had run out. He was surrounded by French police with machine guns. They didn't see a pilot. They saw a criminal. The halo effect had evaporated. He spent time in a French prison that was essentially a dungeon, dark, wet, and stone cold. He sat in his own filth, stripped of the navy blue blazer, stripped of the gold buttons. In the dark, he had to confront the reality of who he was. He wasn't the Skywayman. He wasn't the James Bond of the airways. He was a lonely boy who had built a castle out of paper. Frank Abagnale's story is often played as a comedy, a jaunty caper of a clever kid outsmarting the adults. But look deeper. Look at the darkness of the deception. It reveals a terrifying fragility in our society. We built a world on symbols. We built a world where a hat and a pin are worth more than truth. We want to believe in the pilot. We need to believe in the pilot. Because if we admit that the man in the cockpit might be a 16-year-old boy who doesn't know how to land, then we have to admit that we are not safe. Abagnale proved that safety is an illusion. He proved that we are all walking around with our eyes closed, trusting the costume, trusting the set design, desperate to believe that someone, somewhere, knows what they are doing. He exploited the visual language of authority to travel the world. But the man in our next story went much further. He didn't just fake a job. He didn't just fake a uniform. He looked at the map of the world, saw a blank space, and decided to play God. He invented an entire country. London, 8. The fog here is not like the mist of the countryside. It is a yellow, choking soup that tastes of coal, smoke, and horse manure. It clings to the damp wool coats of men walking the cobblestones. The Napoleonic Wars are over, but the victory has left a bitter aftertaste. The economy is stagnant. The interest rates on government bonds, the consols are plummeting. There is a hunger in the city, not just a hunger for bread, but a hunger for yield, a hunger for escape. The British Empire is vast, but for the average Scotsman freezing in a tenement, it feels distant. They are trapped in a grey world of limited opportunity. And into this grey world walks a man draped in the colours of a tropical parrot. His name is Gregor MacGregor. He is a Scot, but he does not dress like a man from the Highlands. He wears a flamboyant uniform of green and gold, dripping with medals that clink softly when he moves. He carries himself with the swagger of a conquistador. He claims to be a hero of the South American Wars of Independence, a brother in arms to Simon Bolivar. But he is more than a soldier. He is royalty. He announces himself as His Serene Highness, the Cacique of Poyais. The word cacique rolls off the tongue with an exotic, spicy flavor. It implies absolute power. And Poyais, it is a name that no one in London has ever heard. Yet MacGregor speaks of it as if it were Atlantis, rising from the sea. He unfolds a map on the tables of the finest banking houses in the city. The map is a masterpiece of cartography. It depicts a territory on the Mosquito Coast of Central America, wedged between Honduras and Nicaragua. But where the real maps show only jagged coastlines and mosquito-infested swamps, MacGregor's map shows a civilization. Look closely at the ink. He has drawn rivers that sparkle with gold dust. He has drawn rolling hills cleared for sugarcane and tobacco. He has drawn a capital city, St. Joseph, with wide European boulevards, an opera house, a cathedral, and a deep-water port capable of holding the entire British Navy. He tells the bankers and the desperate settlers that the natives are friendly, civilized, and eager for British rule. He tells them the soil is so fertile you can harvest 3 crops of maize a year with barely a shovel. He describes a land where the rivers are full of fish and the forests are free of disease. It is Eden. It is the utopia fallacy, weaponized. MacGregor understands that desperate people do not buy land, they buy hope. He targets his own countrymen, the Scots. He knows their pride and their poverty. He sells them the dream of a new Caledonia, a colony where they can be masters of their own destiny, far away from the crushing gloom of Britain. The marketing campaign is relentless. He publishes a guidebook, written by a fictional Captain Thomas Strangeways, detailing the wonders of Poyais. He sets up a Poyaisian legation in London, flying a flag of his own designer green cross on a white background. He starts selling land grants. Imagine the scene in the Edinburgh offices, where the beaten farmers and small shopkeepers, men with calloused hands and life savings wrapped in dirty handkerchiefs, lining up to buy a piece of paradise. They trade their hard-earned gold sovereigns for paper notes printed by MacGregor the Poyais dollar. They sign deeds for plots of land they have never seen. They buy commissions in the Poyaisian army. paying for the privilege of wearing a uniform that exists only in MacGregor's mind. MacGregor takes their money, hundreds of thousands of pounds in today's currency, and in return, he gives them a piece of paper and a promise. He is selling a restart button for life. In late 1822 and early 1823, the ships set sail. The Honduras packet and the Canursley Castle. On board are hundreds of settlers, men, women, and children. They are carrying their tools, their Bibles, and their dreams. They stand on the deck as the grey coast of Scotland fades into the mist, their hearts swelling with the anticipation of the warm sun of St. Joseph. The voyage is long and brutal. The Atlantic rolls beneath them, but the mood is buoyant. They are going to the land of milk and honey. They talk about the houses they will build on the boulevards MacGregor showed them on the map. They talk about the gold they will pan from the rivers. Then they see the coast. It is not the golden shore of the guidebook. It is a tangled green hell. The Mosquito Coast is a wall of mangroves and jungle steaming in the oppressive heat. The ships drop anchor. The settlers crowd the railings, shielding their eyes against the glare, looking for the white towers of St. Joseph. They look for the opera house. They look for the port. There is nothing. There is only the silence of the jungle, broken by the screech of monkeys and the hum of insects. There is no city. There is no port. There are no friendly natives waiting with garlands of flowers. There are only a few bamboo huts rotting in the mud, left behind by previous failed attempts to settle the inhospitable land. Confusion turns to denial. We must be in the wrong place, they say. The captain has made an error. They send landing parties ashore. They hack through the vegetation. They find nothing but swamp. The fertile soil is a thin layer of rot over sand. The gold-filled rivers are sluggish, brown veins of water teeming with parasites. The reality begins to set in like a fever. They have been sold a hallucination. The cacique is not coming. The opera house is a lie. The land deeds in their pockets are worthless scraps of paper. They are stranded on one of the most hostile coastlines on Earth, thousands of miles from home, with no food, no shelter, and no way back. Then the dying starts. It is not a quick death. It is the slow, agonizing decomposition of the human body in the tropics. Malaria and yellow fever sweep through the camp. The friendly climate MacGregor promised is a convection of an off disease. Men who had dreamed of being plantation owners are reduced to shivering skeletons, lying in the mud, vomiting black bile. The settlers try to build shelter, but the wood rots. They try to plant their seeds, but the rains wash them away. They are trapped in a nightmare of MacGregor's making. The Poyais dollars they clutch in their hands are mocked by the indifference of the jungle. You cannot eat a lie. Back in London, MacGregor is living in luxury. He is attending balls, toasting to the success of his colony. He is negotiating a massive loan with the bond market, using the resources of Poyais as collateral. He is the toast of the town, the brave adventurer who is civilizing the savage world. While he sips his claret, Scottish children are being buried in shallow graves in the mud of Honduras, their bodies dug up by wild animals before the sun sets. Eventually, a passing ship rescues the survivors. Of the 250 settlers who sailed, barely 50 make it back to Britain alive. They are ghosts. Broken, emaciated, traumatized. They bring with them the horrific truth. Poyais does not exist. The news hits London like a thunderclap. The bubble bursts. The Poyais bonds crash to zero. The press turns on the cacique. But here is the most terrifying part of the story. The psychological hold of the utopia fallacy is so strong that even when the survivors returned, some of them defended MacGregor. They blamed the ship captains, they blamed the weather, they blamed themselves. They could not accept that the man who sold them paradise was a monster. To admit that MacGregor was a fraud was to admit that their dream was stupid, and the human ego will fight to the death to avoid admitting it was fooled. MacGregor, seeing the walls closing in, does not apologize. He does not confess. He doubles down. He blames the settlers for being unprepared. He blames the corruption of his officials. And then, before the law can touch him, he slips away. He goes to Paris. And what does he do? He does it again. He starts selling land grants for Poyais to the French. He sets up a new constitution. He finds new victims. The audacity is absolute. He is a vampire who feeds on hope, and the world is full of desperate veins. Gregor MacGregor died in Venezuela years later, never having spent a day in prison for the massed manslaughter of the Poyais settlers. He was buried with full military honors, celebrated as a hero of the independence wars. The lie outlived the truth. His story is a brutal reminder of the danger of desperation. When reality becomes unbearable, the human mind will grab onto any fantasy that offers a way out. We want to believe in the hidden city. We want to believe in the easy gold. We want to believe that there is a place where the rules of hardship do not apply. MacGregor didn't just sell land. He sold a mirror that reflected our deepest desire for a better life. And he proved that for that desire, people will walk willingly into the grave. MacGregor invented a nation to steal gold, but our next imposter invented a language to steal attention, exploiting the aristocracy's obsession with the exotic. The fog of Victorian London and the humid rot of the Mosquito Coast fade into memory. We travel now to a place that feels safer, but is, in its own way, far more suffocating. We travel to the English countryside. The year is 1817. The place is Almondsbury, Gloucestershire. It is a world of green silence, a world of hedgerows, damp wool, and rigid social stratification. The Napoleonic Wars are over. The excitement of the age is fading. For the landed gentry sitting in their drafty manor houses, life is a slow, rhythmic march of boredom. They drink tea, they read the same books, they stare out at the rain. They are desperate for a distraction. They are desperate for the other. In 1817, the other was the Orient. It was a concept, not a place. It was a fever dream of spices, silk, opium, and mystery that existed in the collective imagination of the British aristocracy. They didn't want the reality of the East, the dirt, the disease, the complexity. They wanted the aesthetic. They wanted the story. And on a cold, wet Thursday evening, the story walks right up to their front door. A woman was found wandering in the mud near a cottage. She did not look like the milkmaids or the scullery girls of the village. She wore a black turban wrapped tightly around her head. Her clothes were a strange, chaotic assemblage of heavy black wool and muslin, draped in a way that defied European fashion. She carried a bundle of possessions that looked like the totems of a forgotten religion. She was exhausted. She was shivering. But it was her voice that stopped the villagers in their tracks. When the overseer of the poor tried to question her, she didn't speak the guttural dialect of Gloucestershire. She didn't speak French. She didn't speak German. She pointed a finger at the grey sky and whispered a single word, "Alat." She spoke in a rhythmic, musical tongue that no one had ever heard. It sounded like water flowing over stones. It sounded ancient. The villagers were baffled. They took her to Knoll Park, the estate of Samuel and Elizabeth, The Worrells were the local magistrates, the pillars of the community. They were educated, rational, wealthy people. They were the gatekeepers of reality in Almondsbury, and they were about to become the victims of one of the most bizarre psychological phenomena in history: the collective hallucination of the bored elite. They brought the woman into the manor. The firelight caught the dark angles of her face. She refused the heavy, boiled meat they offered her. Instead, she pointed to the tea. Chainage, she gestured for vegetables. She acted with a haughty, regal disdain for their English customs. She insisted on sleeping on the floor. The Worrells looked at her, and their brains began to short-circuit. They saw the turban. They heard They saw the refusal of meat, and their minds, desperate for color in a gray world, began to fill in the blanks. They didn't see a beggar. They saw a princess. This is the confirmation bias engine starting to turn. When we want something to be true, we treat every piece of evidence as proof. If she refuses food, it's not because she's picky, it's because she is of high caste. If she sleeps on the floor, it's not because she is homeless. It's because she is accustomed to the exotic customs of the East. The Worrells brought in linguists. They brought in travelers. No one could identify the language. She would write strange, cryptic characters on paper, a script that looked like a mixture of Arabic and the doodles of a child. The experts scratched their heads. "It is not known to us," they said. Which, to the Worrells, only proved how rare and special she was. Then came the breakthrough, the fatal validation. A Portuguese sailor named Manuel Anoso happened to be passing through the area. He claimed to speak the languages of the Malay archipelago. He was brought to the manor. He sat across from the woman. He listened to her strange, bubbling speech. He turned to the Worrells, his eyes wide with reverence. "She is speaking a dialect of the Sumatran coast," he announced. "She is a princess. Her name is Caraboo." He spun a tale that matched her pantomime perfectly. She was royalty from the island of Javasu. She had been captured by pirates. She had been held captive on a ship for months. As the ship passed the Bristol Channel, she had thrown herself into the freezing water, swimming ashore to escape her captors. She was a refugee of noble blood. It was a lie, a magnificent, sprawling, impossible lie. There is no island called Javasu. The language was gibberish. The sailor was likely a con man himself, playing along for a free meal, or perhaps he was just swept up in the hysteria, telling the rich white people exactly what they wanted to hear to avoid looking stupid. But the Worrells swallowed it whole. Why? Because it was the perfect story. It validated their own importance. They weren't just boring magistrates in a rainy village anymore. They were the guardians of an Eastern princess. They were characters in a romance novel. Princess Caraboo became a sensation. The house filled with guests. Artists came to paint her portrait. She posed with a strange grace, wearing her turban, holding a handcrafted bow and arrow she had made from a tree branch. She would fence with the gentlemen in the garden, moving with a wild, feral agility. She would climb trees to pray to her sun god. She would swim naked in the lake, shocking and titillating the Victorian sensibilities of her hosts. She was the exotic mirror. The British aristocracy looked at her and saw their own colonial fantasies reflected back. They saw the noble savage. They saw the mysticism of the Orient. They projected so much onto her that she barely had to do anything but nod and make sounds. For 10 weeks, she ruled them. She had the finest scholars in England analyzing her nonsense scribbles, trying to find the linguistic root of Javasu. They wrote papers on it. They argued about the syntax. They found patterns where there were none. It was a mass delusion, fueled by the arrogance of intellect. They believed they were too smart to be fooled by a simpleton, so she must be complex. But the balloon of fantasy is always popped by the needle of reality, and reality arrived in the form of a boarding house landlady named Mrs. Neal. Mrs. Neal read the descriptions of the princess in the Bristol Journal. She looked at the sketch of the woman in the turban. She didn't see royalty. She saw a girl who had rented a room from her a few months prior. A girl who spoke perfect English. A girl who had entertained the children by using a made-up language she used to play with her dolls. Her name wasn't Caraboo. It was Mary Wilcox. Mary was not from Javasu. She was from Witheridge Divan. She was a cobbler's daughter, a maid, a girl from the absolute bottom rung of the British class ladder. She had been abused, mistreated, and discarded by society. She had wandered the roads, starving, begging for work, and finding none. She realized that in England, if you were a poor English girl, you were invisible. You were trash. But if you were a foreign beggar, if you were exotic, suddenly you were interesting. You were human. So she put on a turban. She stopped speaking English, and she walked into the nearest manor house to see what would happen. The confrontation was brutal. Mrs. Neal was brought to the manor. The Worrells watched, holding their breath, praying that the landlady was wrong. But Mary Wilcox, seeing the game was up, didn't fight. She simply dropped the act. The strange, musical language vanished. The regal posture slumped. In a clear, broad Devonshire accent, she admitted everything. She explained how she made up the words. She explained how the Portuguese sailor had just guessed what she meant, and she had played along. She explained that the Javasia script was just random marks. The humiliation of the Worrells was absolute. They had housed a maid in their guest room. They had treated a cobbler's daughter like royalty. The scholars who had written papers on her language looked like idiots. The artists who had painted her looked like dupes. But here is the twist. They didn't hate her. In a normal con, when the truth comes out, there is anger, there is prison. But Mary Wilcox hadn't stolen money. She hadn't forged checks like Abagnale. She hadn't sold fake land like MacGregor. She had stolen their attention. She had stolen their boredom. She had given them the best 10 weeks of their lives. The Worrells, realizing that they were the architects of their own deception, actually paid for her passage to America. They sent her away not as a criminal, but as a curiosity. She had exposed the shallow nature of their perception. She proved that the superiority of the upper class was a fragile construct, easily hacked by a girl with a turban and a little bit of imagination. Princess Caraboo proved that we see what we want to see. We ignore the red flags, the bad accent, the impossible geography, the logical gaps because the lie is more entertaining than the truth. We prefer the beautiful mystery to the mundane reality. Mary Wilcox died years later, selling leeches to hospitals, a poor woman once again, but for one glorious summer, she forced the most powerful people in England to bow to a maid. She fooled the bored elite with a fantasy of the East. But our final master of deception fooled the most. Dangerous men in Europe, the Nazis, by exploiting their ultimate weakness, their own vanity. The smoke has cleared from the battlefields of Europe, but the stench of death still hangs heavy over the canals of Amsterdam. It is May 1945. The Third Reich has collapsed into a pile of rubble and broken concrete. The monsters are in chains, or they are dead in bunkers. But in the liberated Netherlands, the reckoning is just beginning. The Dutch people are hungry, they are cold, and they are furious. They are hunting for the collaborators. They are looking for the men and women who grew fat while their neighbors starved. The traitors who sold the soul of their country to the Nazis. In a cold, damp prison cell in Amsterdam sits a man who fits the profile perfectly. His name is Han van Meegeren. He is a small man, frail, with a face ravaged by decades of chain smoking and morphine addiction. He wears a suit that was once expensive, but now hangs loosely on his skeletal frame. To the Allied forces and the Dutch government, he is not just a traitor. He is a cultural war criminal. The charge against him is capital treason, specifically looting the Dutch national patrimony. The investigators have found the paper trail. It is undeniable. During the darkest days of the occupation, this man, Han van Meegeren, sold a priceless painting by the Dutch master Johannes Vermeer to none other than Rijksmarschall Herman Gring. Gring, the bloated, drug-addicted vulture of the Nazi Party. The man who treated Europe like his personal shopping mall. Gring wanted a Vermeer more than anything in the world. He wanted the prestige of owning the work of the Sphinx of Delft, and Han van Meegeren gave it to him. He sold him a painting titled Christ, with the woman taken in adultery, for the astronomical sum of 1.65 million guilders. The Dutch authorities are disgusted. They look at Van Meegeren and see a man who stripped the walls of his own nation to decorate the palace of a monster. They prepare the gallows. The script is written. He will be tried. He will be convicted. And he will be executed. But as the interrogation drags on, as the pressure mounts in that grey concrete room, Van Meegeren cracks. He looks at his interrogators with eyes that are wide with panic and a strange, manic pride. He slams his fist on the table. "You fools!" he screams. "I did not sell a national treasure to the Nazis. I sold them a forgery. I painted it myself." The interrogators stop. They look at each other. They laugh. It is the desperate lie of a doomed man. They know art. They have had the world's leading experts certify the painting. It hangs in a museum. It has the crags of 300 years of age. It has the unmistakable blue pigmentopis lazuli that Vermeer used. It has the light. It has the soul. It is a masterpiece. A drug addict like Van Meegeren could not have painted it. But Van Meegeren insists, and to understand why, we must go back. We must peel away the war, peel away the politics, and look into the heart of a failed artist. Years before the war, Han van Meegeren was a painter who wanted to be a giant. He worshipped the Golden Age. He painted in the style of the old masters, romantic, soft, glowing with religious light. But the art world of the 1920s had moved on. They wanted cubism. They wanted surrealism. They wanted jagged lines and modern angst. The critics looked at Van Meegeren's work and sneered. They called him a dinosaur. They called his work derivative, sentimental kit. The criticism didn't just hurt his feelings. It broke his mind. It planted a seed of hatred that grew into a black, thorny tree. He decided he wouldn't just prove them wrong, he would destroy them. He would build a trap made of oil and canvas, a trap designed to catch the arrogance of the critics. He disappeared into his studio. He spent years studying the chemistry of the 17th century. He bought authentic 17th century canvases, scraping off the old, cheap paintings so he could use the original, cracked base. He tracked down the specific pigments Vermeer used, grinding his own lapis lazuli to get that mesmerizing, expensive blue. He bought badger hair brushes, but the hardest part was the age. Oil paint takes 50 years to dry completely. A fresh painting smells of linseed oil. It is soft. If you rub it with alcohol, the paint comes off. A 300-year-old painting is hard as rock. It is impervious to solvents. Van Meegeren needed a chemical miracle. He found it in a substance that belonged to the modern industrial age, not the golden age. Bakelite, formaldehyde phenol resin, the stuff used to make telephones and ashtrays. He discovered that if he mixed bakelite with lilac oil and injected it into the paint, and then baked the canvas in a custom-built electric oven at 100 degrees Celsius, the plastic would harden instantly. The paint would crackle and craze exactly like old glaze. He created his masterpiece, The Supper at Emos. It was a Vermeer that Vermeer never painted. It was tragic, pious, and beautiful. He aged it artificially, rolling it over a cylinder to create stress fractures, filling the cracks with black ink to mimic centuries of dust. He unleashed it on the world. He brought it to the supreme authority of Dutch art, Dr. Abraham Brede. Bredius was 80 years old, half-blind, and possessed of an ego the size of a cathedral. Bredius looked at the painting. He saw the blue. He saw the composition. But more importantly, he saw what he wanted to see. He had always theorized that Vermeer had a religious period. This painting confirmed his own theory. It flattered his intellect. Bredius declared it a masterpiece. "We have found the masterpiece of the century," he wrote. The world cheered. The critics who had called Van Meegeren a hack were now weeping with joy over a painting he had baked in his oven like a pizza. Van Meegeren had won. He had the money, millions of guilders. He had the satisfaction. But then the trap snapped shut on him. He couldn't reveal the truth. If he told the world he was a forger, he would go to prison for fraud. He was addicted to the money. He was addicted to the lifestyle. So he kept painting. He became a factory. He churned out Vermeers, de Hocheshoes. The quality dropped. The faces became stiff, the eyes hollow, but nobody noticed. Because nobody was looking at the art anymore. They were looking at the price tag. Then came the Nazis. Then came Gring. When Gring's art agents found Van Meegeren, they saw a man willing to deal. They saw a Vermeer that looked perfect for the Rijksmarshal's collection at Kranhor. Gring traded 137 authentic, looted paintings for this one fake. He hung it on his wall. He boasted about it to Hitler. He would stand before it, swirling his brandy, lecturing his generals on the purity of Aryan art, completely unaware that he was staring at a piece of plastic-infused kitsch painted by a morphine addict in 1942. It was the ultimate joke, the master's revenge. Van Meegeren had conned the man who was conning Europe. But now, in 1945, the joke is over. Van Meegeren is in a cell, facing a death sentence for treason. The judge doesn't believe him. The experts don't believe him. They refuse to admit they were fooled. To admit that Christ, with the woman taken in adultery, is a fake, is to admit that their entire profession is a sham. They are fighting to protect their own egos, even if it means executing a man. Van Meegeren makes a desperate offer. "Give me a canvas," he says. "Give me my brushes. Give me my drugs. I will paint you a Vermeer, right here, in front of your eyes." The court agrees. It becomes the spectacle of the century. Van Meegeren is locked in a room, under armed guard. He is given alcohol and morphine to steady his shaking hands. For 6 weeks, he works. The reporters watch through the glass. The judges watch. The world watches slowly. Out of the blank canvas, a face emerges. It is the face of Jesus, painted in that soft, glowing, distinctively Vermeer style. It is undeniable. The man has the technique. He paints Jesus teaching in the temple. It is not his best work. He is dying. He is terrified. He is high, but it is proof. Then comes the science. They take the masterpiece sold to Gring. They subject it to new chemical tests. They find the bakelite. They find the cobalt blue that wasn't invented until the 19th century. The conviction for treason is dropped. The charge is changed to forgery. Han van Meegeren is sentenced to 1 year in prison. But something strange happens in the public consciousness. He is no longer a traitor. He is a hero. He is the man who swindled the Nazis. The Dutch people, humiliated by 5 years of occupation, love him. He becomes a symbol of resistance, a trickster god who made a fool of the fat tyrant Gring. But this, too, is a lie. Van Meegeren wasn't a resistance hero. He didn't sell the painting to hurt the Nazis. He sold it to get rich. He sent a congratulatory telegram to Hitler. He lived in luxury while his countrymen starved. He was a narcissist who cared only for his own validation. The public, just like the critics, just like Gring, saw what they wanted to see. They needed a hero, so they turned a con man into a saint. Van Meegeren died of a heart attack just weeks after his trial, before he could serve his sentence. He died famous. He died wealthy. He died having forced the entire world to dance to his tune. His story is the final, crushing proof of our central thesis. The Khan is not about the skill of the liar. It is about the need of the victim. Dr. Bredius needed to be right about his theories, so he accepted a fake. The critics needed a discovery, so they ignored the flaws. Herman Gring needed to feel like a cultured aristocrat, so he bought a lie. And the Dutch people needed a victory against the Nazis, so they canonized a criminal. Han van Meegeren didn't paint Vermeers, he painted mirrors. He held up a canvas and let the world see its own vanity, reflected in the oil and the bakelite. We have traveled through a kingdom of lies. We started with Victor Lustig selling the Eiffel Tower to a man desperate for status. We flew with Frank Abagnale, who wore a uniform to hack our trust in authority. We sailed to the imaginary country of Poyais with Gregor MacGregor, fueled by the desperation for a better life. We knelt before Princess Caraboo, blinded by our hunger for the exotic. And we ended here, in a courtroom in Amsterdam, with a forgery that fooled the devil himself. What connects these stories? What is the thread that ties the scrap dealer to the Nazi warlord? It is the uncomfortable truth that we are not victims of the con artist. We are their accomplices. We want the easy money. We want the secret knowledge. We want the beautiful story. We want the world to be more magical, more heroic, and more profitable than it actually is. The con artist simply walks through the door that we have already unlocked. They don't steal our reality. We give it to them gladly, in exchange for a dream. The most convincing lie is never the one told by the other person. The most convincing lie is the one we tell ourselves. And until we learn to look in the mirror and see the cracks in our own vanity, we will always be buying the Eiffel Tower. We will always be booking passage to Poyais. And we will always be staring at a piece of plastic, convinced it is a masterpiece.